Welcome to episode 11 of Building Blocks with Brendan. Today we connect with Adam over at Wickens Wicked Reptile to learn how he turned a passion and hobby into a full-time business. Similar to many others, when it comes to YouTube, everyone wanted to become famous and everyone wanted to start their own thing. But just like being a billionaire 20-year-old and creating your own Facebook or becoming a professional athlete, there's a lot of hard work that goes on behind the scenes that many people don't notice. You tend just to see the final result and put your goals there, but don't see all the grinding and work and passion is required to get to that level. And being a content creator is no different. I mean, people complain how, it's so easy to be a TikTok star. Then you do it or become a star in anything. There's a lot of skill and hard work behind the scenes that makes someone popular. Adam's channel really has grown during COVID, and himself being a comedian as a main profession really adds a flair to his videos that are quite unique. Me being a new reptile owner during COVID, getting my leopard gecko named Ember, has really made me interested in his videos, and I became a follower for close to a year now. And hopefully you all guys check out his videos as he just broke the 100K mark, and he's really on a rocket ship with his channel growth. Similar to many others, when it comes to starting a business, a lot of times there's hours spent that no one can see, working in your garage or, for Adam's sake, editing videos. And he speaks about his journey, how initially it started as a hobby, spending hours making this content, getting only a few views. But eventually, just like anything else, the biggest difference is having a plan. He spoke about how he was able to develop a plan, develop a following, and how he was able to make this passion, his hobby, a full-time job. Hopefully you guys enjoy this episode, and if you're like me, who got into reptiles during COVID, hopefully you check out his videos as he has some of the best husbandry on YouTube right now, and the videos are truly entertaining, even if you don't own a reptile yourself. So Adam, thank you so much for joining me. I came across you and your profile, being someone else from Ontario, going through lockdown, spent a lot of time on YouTube, and you really have a very rapidly following user base or viewer base really around the reptile world, reptiles in general. But I'll let you explain a bit more. And how did you first get into the hobby? And then how did you turn it from, hey, I'm making videos made for fun, now it's going to be a way of making a business or a way of kind of developing a brand identity from it?
I always kind of had it like in the back of my head that I wanted to do something with it and like turn it into a revenue stream. But I didn't realize that it was going to be a feasible thing. So I think that from the get-go, when I was convinced by someone who I do comedy shows for, as a comedy producer, he said, hey, you should start a channel. And I was in between jobs at the time. So I thought, okay, I'll try it. But I always had in the back of my head that comedy is in the forefront, and then this is like on the back burner, and then this ever turns into anything, great. And then it very quickly, especially because of like this whole pandemic thing, was like, okay, now comedy's on the back burner because it doesn't exist anymore, basically. And then put everything into this. And then I guess it was November when I was I could make a living, and I quit my job. And I just kind of like, I knew, I guess last year around this time, I was playing frisbee with a buddy, and he's like a money guy, and he's like, here's what you should do. You should buy another house. You should sell your house so you have a nest egg, and you should quit your job, and who cares what you're making on the channel? It'll give you enough time to put the effort in. But then it turned out that at that time I was good. Like, I was making enough money that I could live off of it anyway, and I sold the house. So yeah, that's just kind of like how that went, I guess.
So you started the channel. Why did you start the channel? Was it just a way of developing a personality, to kind of developing a brand, or was it just a way of sharing the world with your reptile hobby, or how did you get into the channel itself initially?
Well, I've had failed channels before this, so I've always wanted to do this. I just, like, the first one was like a fitness channel that I never even recorded a video. I just wrote like 100 videos, and then I had a whiskey channel, and that was bad. And then so I just kind of like, this isn't for me. And then this guy Dylan, he runs Odd Life Entertainment out of Brampton, and or Brantford rather, and he's like, you should start a channel. I know that you don't have a job right now. You're waiting to start your next job in like 10 days or whatever it was. And you have all these animals, and you have this personality. And he saw me do comedy a million times. So he's like, you're funny, so you should start this. So then I jumped in with both feet, and I made the channel, and I made the Instagram, and I made the Facebook page, and I made the channel art, and I went on Fiverr, and I got someone to make the logo, and I recorded a video, and the next day I put out 2 videos. So it was just kind of like very much this guy's right. I'm doing nothing with my life except for like waiting to start this other dead end job, which is what it was. Why don't I just start this? So I was kind of convinced by someone who had no idea that it was going to turn into this.
Yeah, and you've had, I mean, just watching your viewer count and your subscription count over the obviously through pandemic has grown quite substantially. Did you find kind of focusing on full time, did it make a difference? Did you find it dramatically made a difference, or was it just a little bit quicker of a slow burn type thing?
Well, at the beginning, it always takes forever to,
Mm-hmm.
like that's a thing. And I think that's why I quit all the other channels is because you want something now. But then I kind of like, I don't know, I was a competitive bodybuilder like 5 years ago, right? Like that was
Mm-hmm.
the first thing I was ever really good at that I set out to do and I was really good at. And then I decided, okay, well, I keep quitting all these channels before I get any traction. But like, I didn't quit fitness when I didn't get any traction, right? It takes forever to
Mm-hmm.
put yourself in a position where you can be on a stage, right? It took like 3 years before I could even think about it. So I'm like, okay, well, why don't I put at least a year into this and like don't miss a video? So
Mm-hmm.
upload twice a week and never miss a video. And that's what I did. And then I started to get a little bit of traction. And then when I quit the job, then it was like, okay, now I have time for business stuff. And now I can kind of like branch out and do like the business stuff rather than go to work from 8 to 5 and then come home and stay up until 1 or 2 in the morning every night
Mm-hmm.
editing videos. So I think that it was a huge thing. To quit the job was like a massive thing. It was the scariest thing ever because
Mm-hmm.
you're quitting this job where like it wasn't like I wasn't getting rich, but I could afford to buy a house. Like I was making good money, and then now it was the best thing I ever did. But it's like
Mm-hmm.
the scariest thing to do, also.
And really, what's kind of funny about your story is, even though for some they'll be like, "Oh, YouTube," maybe we'll underestimate how much work it is. It's just like anything. Everyone always complains how like, "Oh, how did they become famous?" I'm like, "Have you tried to start a brand? Like, make a Nike? Like, it's if anyone could do it, everyone would be a billionaire." It's one of those things where until, like you said, you tried a few channels, it fails. It's a lot of work, but also just like starting any company, you look at any success story. It's like, oh, they were doing this for 10 years and then they became successful. But everyone always sees the, oh, well, now they got an IPO worth $1 billion. But it's like, yeah, they started this in college. They lived in their cars for 5 years. Then they made some money and then it happened. So it's really, I don't say funny, but it's really interesting how it's always the same story. No matter what you do, can always be viewed through a business lens or an entrepreneurship lens where there is a lull. It does take some time and some consistency.
It's a lot
So
of work for free. It's a
a
lot of
lot.
hours you're working for free.
And what I found it probably, you can probably speak to this better, but when it comes to starting a business, a lot of people say it's a good experience because you're learning everything for yourself, especially if you're doing your own organization or starting your own company. Did you find starting the channel? I know for me, COVID, I'm in Ontario as well. Learning to speak on camera is not the same as learning to speak in front of a room. It is a different set of skills. Did you find that, having some stand-up experience, that having a stage presence helped you on camera? Do you find anything kind of transferable skills at all?
Yeah, I think it helped, but I think also if you looked at my first 30 videos, you'd realize real quick, like this guy sucked. Like I didn't, it was one of those things where I wasn't good naturally. But I don't know, I've always wanted to do something like this. I've always wanted to be a stand-up. I've always, I used to stand on stages wearing 1 square foot of cloth. You know what I mean? So this is just so much easier, I guess, and like less intimidating. And I can, do separate takes. If people send my bloopers, it takes forever to shoot a video. So I feel like this is just easier. And I did the stand-up thing where it's you and a microphone and audience, and that's it. There's no guitar player to bail you out. If you miss a beat, like everybody knows. Where with this, it was just kind of like, oh, okay, let's just relax, man. Just relax. And I think that, transferable skill is a good way to put it. It definitely helped. Being able to talk on a stage in front of people definitely helps with this 100%.
And like you said, I always find a lot of people who tend to have success in life tend to be successful in other things or have done many different things. Like you said, bodybuilding, being on a stage, doing anything like that where you're like, it is effort. Like you said, anything fitness related is like, oh, here's 5 years of effort with very little results. No one thinks, and then one day everyone's like, oh, you're in shape. What were you eating last week? And you're like, this was years of my life grinding away. It's not an instant gratification. But for
Yeah,
you,
and that was like, man, you went on a bodybuilding stage, you're on stage for like 4 minutes for the year. for 4 minutes. You stand there and they call out the poses and you hit the poses, and then you hope they call you at the first call out, and then they move you around. You're on the stage for like between 4 and 8 minutes, depending on how big your class is. So it's like, it is so much work for what it is. And that was way harder than this is. Like, this is like long hours and stuff, but it doesn't matter. Like, I don't have to starve myself for 6 months in order to, be good at this. So like, this is kind of a cakewalk. And I think the main thing is like, being good at anything is just persistence and doing stuff. Like, when everybody's sleeping, you need to be up and doing stuff, right? Everyone who else, like, I have all these other buddies who start channels and they don't go anywhere, and it's not because they're not good or they don't have a presence or, like, it's just, I'm up at 2 working and those guys are asleep or watching Netflix. And that is the difference, I think, for any business. It doesn't, not just this, but any business, is you have to be ready to sacrifice hours and sacrifice going outside. I got a pool out there. I swam in it one time last year, one time. So I was still working the job. So it's just, you have to put in the sacrifice. And if you don't, then just quit, because there's no point. You're never going to go anywhere.
And like what you touched on there, I think one of the things within anything is that when you start out anything, there's a lot of time spent doing stuff you could have, looking back on, could have saved time doing. It's a lot of like making mistakes, grinding things out, then a week later realizing like, I did this wrong, I have to redo it again. I think a lot of people, the hardest stage in the beginning is that when you look at pros in anything, starting a business, YouTube channel, doing anything, they have a process in place already. So it looks easy to them. They're like, oh, I wake up, I call my lawyer, they do this, I call this person. You're like, well, if I had all those people, it'd be easy. But when they started, it was like, oh, I have to do, like, any startup is like, oh, I have to figure out how to read legal documents. Sure, I could hire a lawyer, but I don't have the money for that. So it just takes a lot of the beginning time of just trial and error. And then eventually, once you start having success, is because, like you said, you built that process in place and you learn to love the process. It's very rare that I meet like very successful millionaires or anyone who's like either dumb. Most of them, if not all of them, are very smart at what they do. And secondly, they tend to really love what they do. It's very hard when someone's like, I hate my job, I hate doing the work, but I've been doing it for 15 years and I'm very successful. There is a level, like you said, of waking up early and enjoying it enough where you're willing to give up some time on Netflix or go outside because you see either the rewards from it or you enjoy the process enough to make a decision there. So you talked about pretty strict release schedule, and I'm by no means a creative, but you promised that to yourself. What happens when you're like, I don't know what video I'm going to do, but I've told myself I have to do 2 videos. What is that process like? And how, I guess the writer's block would be the best term for it. How do you get past it?
It's easy now. I'm a sellout. I like just go on my Discord channel, which has like, I don't know how many people, 2,000, 3,000 people on it now, and just say, hey, what do you guys want to see? And then I'll go like at everyone and I'll get 200 ideas in 10 minutes. So it's easy now. But back then it was just kind of like looking at what everyone else was doing. So I'd go to like Snake Discovery or Clint and be like, okay, they did this. Why didn't they do a video about this instead? That was like similar enough, but it was different, where you're not copying ideas.
Yeah.
Similar to the way that you write stand-up. You hear something, like in a song, or someone says something in a conversation and you think, and then you take it in a different direction. So I think that it's just kind of like being a creative, and I never would have thought about myself that way until like a few years ago, but you just kind of like, I don't know, learn to adapt. And I've never really run out of ideas. It's just running out of ideas that I think are good ideas. So I don't know. I've never really had an issue with that. Like, there's times where I know that I'm behind, especially when I was working the day job, and it's like, I have to film today, but I don't even know what I'm going to film. So it's just kind of like, okay. And then I have a book where I write down ideas, and a lot of them are just garbage and I don't want to do them. And then sometimes I'll reread them and be like, I wrote this a year ago, I never made the video, but what if I made it like this instead? This is a better idea. So I think it's just like, ideas are kind of like butterflies. They like fly around, and then you got to catch them with this net. And if you let it go, that idea might go away forever. You might never see that idea again. There's a million times I'm laying in bed at night, especially with like stand-up thoughts, like ideas for jokes. And I'm like, I'll remember that. And the next day, all day, what was I thinking? That was such a good idea. So you have to write them down, and then eventually it'll just kind of like manifest themselves into something you can actually use, whether it's a video or a joke or whatever, or a business idea for anybody else.
Do you use physical pen and paper for journaling, or do you use your phone? What do you find more effective for kind of keeping notes down?
I do pen and paper a lot.
Mhm,
I'm one of the few guys who still like brings a ringed notebook
mhm,
to shows and stuff. But also I have my notes app, and a lot of the times it'll be like, hey Siri, write this down type thing too.
mhm,
If I'm like in bed, and that's what I do now. And I don't know if my girlfriend's the biggest fan of that because like at
mhm.
like 2 a.m, hey Siri, but
Yeah.
yeah, it works. So I just all of the above, I guess. But I like pen and paper. I still like
Mhm.
pen and paper.
What's very surprising is like growing up as a kid, I disliked writing anything or writing notes down. I was a person who would be like, I can doing homework, especially, was like, I can remember this assignment. I don't need to put it in my agenda. And over years going to university and doing stuff, it did bite me in a butt many times when you go into an office and you're like, hey, where's that report? And you're like, maybe my brain isn't as strong as I remember. But what's really funny though is everyone I talk to. So, before I was talking to someone who's in the heavy metal industry, is in the band, another person who like has other business ventures. Everyone seems to be journaling. So it's one of the few things, or at least taking notes down. It's interesting how everyone does it in every industry. And it almost always seems like a secret. People are like, guess what? I keep a journal and take notes. But almost everyone does it because, like you're saying, that butterfly analogy is beautiful. But you're saying it's like once you forget it, you really do forget it. And like you said, some of them it could be bad. But a lot of times, if you look back on your ideas, you can always have a different view, different set of opinions, different way of taking old ideas and making them new. So you're mostly, or I guess within the reptile world, you had reptiles before, you start the channel. Do you ever feel like is it difficult to keep the love? Like, is it ever feel more like a business where you're like, okay, I need to dive deeper into reptiles? Maybe I feel like I'm an aquarium guy today, or has the passion always been there from the beginning, or is it more of like I guess you say a job?
It does feel like a job sometimes, but
Mhm,
I don't know. Like I'm one of those guys that I go balls deep immediately into things,
mhm,
and I have so many interests. I have too many interests.
mhm,
So it is one of those things, and I experience this a lot with the bodybuilding thing because you
mhm.
just if you go too hard at something, you get bored. Like you just
Yeah.
get tired, you get burnt out,
Mhm,
and especially near the end towards a show. And that was the first time I ever got into photography. It was like I got a vacation check from a job I was working, and
mhm.
I bought a camera 3 weeks
Ooh,
out from a
mhm,
show. Like I should be concentrating, hyper focused on this, and
mhm,
then now I'm taking up like this new hobby. So with reptiles, it's the same thing. The difference is reptiles are living beings.
mhm,
So when I'm done with you, I know I have to go downstairs and change water and spray down some of the enclosures and stuff. And
mhm,
it's just like one of those things where I'm not dreading it anymore. Although I used to sometimes. It's just
mhm,
one of those things like I have a system, and I made a video last week. The last video I made was the things I hate about 5 things I hate about reptiles and how to get
mhm,
around them. So I've recently, like in the last year, kind of started adopting these workarounds for everything that I do
mhm,
in life. I hate, doing cardio, whatever. So how do I do it
mhm,
instead? Well, I set goals and where like, and I, so it's just kind of like workarounds. So yeah, it does feel like a job sometimes, but I'm getting
mhm,
better at finding workarounds and making the resistance in my own brain a little bit less.
mhm. That makes sense. I mean, I think anything in life, having a process, having workarounds makes things easier, but it always does take trial and error to figure those out. Did I mean, you started China for quite a while ago. Did you ever feel like you said in the past, you were into bodybuilding, you have 1,000 hobbies? I'm the same. Every month, I have what I call like a fun slush fund, but it's like a fun money fund where like, I'm into yo-yos this month. I'm into, I'm still into bonsai trees, but I was heavily into bonsai. I went to Japan for 3 months to go to
Oh,
work at a
wow.
bonsai nursery. I would say random, but like have very changing interests. Like I got a sous vide, cooked like 3 steaks. Now I'm like, this process is a little more difficult. So I've had a lot of those interests heavily. But you said you started a few channels in the past. Going through the kind of focusing primarily on reptiles. I mean, you obviously like them. Your videos are still highly entertaining and focused. Did you ever feel like, oh, I want to another channel about another interest, or has it just been because there's so many things to talk about with reptiles? There was never a need or never feel like a focus to switch to another topic in a channel.
I think with reptiles, it was a good move for me to go that route.
Mm-hmm,
If I had to choose to
mm-hmm,
do any topic, it wouldn't be reptiles because it's so limited. The
yeah.
market space, like, there's not very much market share at all. I mean, not a lot of people like reptiles.
Mm-hmm,
If I started a lifestyle channel instead, then that's, infinite, right? Like there's guys like a Peter McKinnon could never be a Peter McKinnon if he was a reptile guy. There's no $6 million or 6 million subscriber reptile channel. There just isn't. And the closest thing we have is Brian Barchuk, but that became a vlog about his life. And the reason he could do that is because he has two camera guys and two editors and a staff and the whole thing. So, I'm glad that I started the reptile thing. I'm good at it. And I think that the entire point was to promote positive husbandry and like make the hobby better. But I definitely would eventually, once this channel gets to a size where I can hire an editor, which I've been trying to do. I actually have to cancel it. Like I have to fire this guy after this. I need to find a good editor, and then I can kind of like branch out, because I would like to start a second channel. But I also want to make sure that this channel is set up to kind of run itself, and I can still reply to comments and do all the stuff that I like to do and interact with my audience and not like abandon it. But also I want to like streamline some things, because I spend 24 hours sitting here editing videos every week. So if I can get rid of that, then I can kind of start something else maybe. So I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah.
No, it's true. And like you're saying, it makes a lot of sense, especially once the channel gets to a certain size, being able to, I wouldn't say take away the things you dislike, which is sometimes true, but giving you ability to do what you're better at is always like a better way of saying it.
Delegate, especially so that you're doing the important stuff.
Exactly. I mean, and one of the big things is I found is like, no matter what you do, if you can develop a self brand or like a brand identity, and I guess in other words, it helps you do everything in life. I know people who've started like channels in one domain, but typically your audience might like reptiles. Like when I started watching you, I didn't have a reptile. Now I have a little leopard gecko named Ember, but I enjoyed you as a personality, even though, I mean, I've never skateboarded in my life, watch a lot of skateboard videos, because you like the host and the people around it. And
I've never skateboarded, and I also watch skateboard videos.
It's one of those things where like you're saying, like your personality can become, like you're saying, Brian Barchuk, kind of being the not center of attention more, but kind of people falling in love with you more than some of the other topics I'm going to be speaking of. What would the other channel be? Would it be more around lifestyle, or is there another secret hobby you have? Are you getting back into the fitness world? Are you going to be a Gymshark sponsored athlete soon? Like what's the plan?
Man, being a Gymshark sponsored athlete is a goal I've had since 2013. So that'd be kind of cool. But I don't know. I'd like to start a lifestyle channel, because when you do a lifestyle channel, you can kind of do whatever. And I like tech. I like fitness, so I feel like those are, two big niches, and if you can put them together. So I'm not really sure, but there's some other things too. Like I've been tossing around the idea of, going to school to learn how to paramotor. I think that's like a cool thing. I watched Tucker Gott like way too much. I'm kind of afraid of heights, but so is everybody else who starts that sport. It seems like it basically, if you're on, it's you there's a parachute and then you have a fan on your back and then you fly through it's like the craziest thing in the world. I thought it was fake when I first learned about it. So I don't know, like there's certain things that I would like to take up and kind of like start something new and then create a channel about it. And then it's like a learn with me thing. Because every channel is like, okay, I've been taking care of reptiles for 10 years and now I start. And then there's a disconnect. And there's certain things I talk about where new people are like, dude, you lost me, because I learned this 10 years ago. So I assume everybody knows it. I assume everyone knows what a cluebird is, or what an elapid is, or what the difference between a viper and a lapid. Like, so I think that if I started something new, or like went back to fitness where I'm very out of shape now, and kind of like, go on a journey with me. I kind of like that, because I like channels like that. And there's not really a lot of them. So I think I'd probably do something along those lines.
Funny enough, you speak of paramotor. That was one hobby I almost jumped into, because it's expensive, but not extremely cost prohibitive compared to cars, you would say. But at the same time, being in Toronto, I was like, where am I going to fly? I almost legitimately bought one. I'm like, where am I going to fly this? Also, they make it look so safe, because you just take a lesson, you go up, you have a parachute. And I'm like, it's still you're still relatively dangerous. I don't know why in my head I'm like, this is going to be easy. I'm just going to go to McDonald's, because I saw some guy on YouTube do it.
Tucker Gott, exactly. 42 million views he had on that video.
And that's one of those things, if you're like, oh, I have this very extremely niche hobby. Like you said, I thought it was fake. I'm like, oh, this is fake. It's not fake. Huge following. And I guarantee probably 99% of people do not do that sport or do that activity. It's just because it's so unique and entertaining. And it makes it feel like I could do it as well. I've never flown a plane. I think it's probably a little bit simpler, but I have no field, no ability to do it. But in my head, I'm like, I might go buy one this week. They're only a few $1,000s, but that was very funny how I feel that should be more popular for what it is. I'm surprised it's not more popular, but I guess it's just one of those things. And what do you
Well,
yeah.
in Canada, you have to like. There's only 3 places because you need an ultralight aircraft license in Canada to do it, and there's only 3 places in Canada. So you can either go to Alberta. I forget what the other one is, but the other one's in St. Catharines actually. So it's here.
Oh.
So I don't know. And actually, the guy there's a comedian named Mark who's from Britain, but he lives here now, and he used to teach paramotoring at this school. He was one of the 3 schools, and I know him. I've known him for years, and we just kind of like started talking about him. It was crazy. So I think that the reason that people don't do it is because although it's not crazy expensive, to go to school is like $6,000 to get your license, and then to get the license is very difficult, and then it's like $12,000 for the equipment if you buy new. So there is a cost prohibitiveness to it, I guess. And it's one of those things where you can't just kind of like gently go into, you know, like cars. You can't just go and rent the car and see if you like it, go for a test drive. It's like, it's a much more, I don't know, difficult thing to get into, I guess.
Good thing you told me I needed a license, so I didn't go buy one for $2,000 off secondhand and be like, this is illegal. Also, you can't do this on the 401, Brendan. I'm like, oh, okay. Good thing I knew. But what I found
in Canada, you need a license to do that. You even need a license to fly a drone now. It's so stupid.
I wanted a drone the longest time until I'm like, I can go to a park, can't do a park. I can go to Banff, can't do that. I'm going to go to ski hill, can't do that. So they've shut down drones as well. One of the interesting things you touched on, which I think will be very cool, especially if you were to start a new channel, going into a new hobby, is that typically when you start something new or you start a channel, either don't have the skills to be a good videographer, record stuff. So your earlier videos tend to be weak because you're like, oh, I need to learn to speak on camera while I have this new hobby. It'd be interesting to see someone who already has, like a following, understands how to YouTube or at least develop a self-brand to get into something new. I think that'd be quite entertaining, especially if you're going to high heights with your paramotor and parachute. But it's one of the really interesting things how I think, especially, I mean, you've seen it in podcasting. You also have one of the great memes. I don't know if I consider memes, but like in your videos, seems like an MMA fan, do a lot of things. So I think I found that very interesting and very funny, having a lot of those jokes in there. Have you found that, I know you say, stand up, would you consider yourself a stand up and a YouTuber, or more like what comes first in your mind when you have like your self identity? Are you a stand up who does YouTube, or are you a YouTuber who also does stand up?
Well, at this point, I'm a YouTuber who does stand up because I'm a YouTuber who used to do stand up because I haven't been on stage since December. And, before that, it was like a break from March until August. So I think if everything was open still, I don't know. It's a weird thing because who knows what would have happened if there was no shutdown. But I would like to think of myself as equal. I mean, the dream is to go around the US visiting, like doing collabs, visiting zoos, doing tours and stuff like that during the day, filming, sending all that stuff to an editor, and then doing stand up at night around the state. Like that's the goal. That is the end goal. So I would like it to be both, but at this point, I'm a YouTuber who also does stand up.
That is one good thing about stand up is that it's typically done at night. So like you said, you could still do YouTube, still do stand-up, and they're relatively, I mean, both, I would say they're relatively similar, but like developing a brand on one helps you develop a brand on another. Any following is a good following, and I mean, you bring a lot of your humor to your videos. Now, starting out, how many reptiles do you have when you started the channel, and how much has that grown since the channel started taking off more and more?
It's grown a lot. Like in 2017, I had a lot of, I got rid of most of my ball pythons because I just decided I don't want to breed ball pythons anymore. So I had a pretty substantial collection, and then I started the channel in January 2019, and I think at the time I had like 40-ish reptiles. So it's doubled basically, but a lot of those are like babies that I hatched out that I just didn't want to sell. Or the thing is too, like the reptiles pay rent now, so yeah. Like it's a different thing. Back then I was just spending all this money. I was going to work so I could afford to have reptiles, but now I have reptiles so I can afford to live here. So, and I guess I should like not misconstrue this. I do take as good care. I take better care now than I did then, because I have the time and extra motivation.
Mhm.
And that's the thing, is like, most people who have you have a leopard gecko, no
Mhm.
one's ever going to see that. So you could have it in the most ridiculous conditions
Mhm.
and no one would ever know. But if I did that, everyone knows. So I like the idea that, yeah, just because, like, as an aside, I never really thought about it like that, but I think I've got better care than most people because I have to, because it's in front of a camera. So I don't know. I guess that's something I
Mhm.
never thought of until right now.
And that is one interesting thing I guess we can speak of, is like you're saying, is same comparison. When a company goes public, everything's looked at. For you, anything in your husbandry, whether it be because you're recording them, everyone sees your animals on your shoulder all the time. You can always be scrutinized for almost anything you do. And I mean, within any hobby, there's always people who are very adamant that their way is right, and then they'll link articles, and a lot of people will say, "You're wrong. Look at this article." And
Mhm.
I think that's with everything in life, but I've seen it more, especially with, I'd say, more niche. I would say reptiles are relatively niche compared to other pets, just because there isn't as much common knowledge on it. So, and although typically your comment section is relatively peaceful and happy and pretty like supportive overall, did you find like early on, was that a challenge with like constantly people saying like, this is this is right, this is wrong, and you're being, well, I've done this before, this is actually the right thing? Did you find yourself correcting a lot of people, or because you're used to being on stage and people maybe not being as nice when you're on stage, where you're just used to like, hey, some people are just going to disagree with everything? Or how'd you get over that?
I think the main difference, like,
Mm-hmm.
you're right, on the comment section on my YouTube channel, it's mostly good.
Mm-hmm.
If I post something on a Facebook group, that is when all of these um, 28-year-olds who live in their mother's basements come out.
Mm-hmm.
That's when all the people come out and they are hypercritical because there's a screen right there.
Mm-hmm.
These are the same people. In Canada, Reptiles is the worst group in the world for this.
Mm-hmm.
But if I go to an expo, they don't say anything to me. They look at me, I look at them, I know who they are. They don't want to say anything to me
Mm-hmm.
because I'm quick, and with an audience,
Mm-hmm.
it's one person heckling you and you shut them down, or you hope
Mm-hmm.
to, and that's it. No one else is really going to jump in. But on Facebook, they dogpile, they pile
Mm-hmm.
onto each other. And it's all these guys who have been doing it for 15 years. And I read my last care guide in 1995. So that's the right way, because nothing ever changes. And I talk about this all the time. I called them cage Karens in my last
Mm-hmm.
video. And I think that that is the main difference between stand up or like any live
Mm-hmm.
audience or a conversation, and these online trolls,
Mm-hmm.
because they pile on, and the Facebook groups are a cesspool
Mm-hmm.
for toxicity, if that's a thing.
Yeah.
Um, Besides the System of a Down album, but I
Mm-hmm.
think that yeah, it's something definitely to deal with, and it's I get kind of worked up about it because it's just so silly. And these people, they think their way is the only way, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
and they're unwilling to take new views. And
Mm-hmm.
especially because it's animals, they get very aggressive, because
Mm-hmm.
if they think that you shouldn't be using aspen bedding, you should be using coconut coir instead, they act like you're murdering your animal. They're
Mm-hmm.
acting like you're stabbing it in the eyes
Mm-hmm.
by doing what they are told not to do from someone who taught them how to keep reptiles in
Mm-hmm.
1990,
And what's really funny about that, it really reminds me of like, I maybe with like a lot of people got really into fitness, and the biggest thing was like creatine. I was like, do you take creatine monohydrate? No. You have to use casein protein at night because that is the 1%. I'm like, yeah, but you're on steroids, first of all. So let's just be serious. This is not making a difference. And I mean, it could be the age group, you're in your early 20s, where you're like, I read this and this is what this person does, so I'm right. And then you throw in big words. You're like, well, because of the branch chain amino acids based on this cycle. You're not a scientist. And I find that kind of similar. People have, there could be always a right answer. Like there is probably better answers, but it's like fighting over that 1% when you don't even clean your, don't even clean your cage, but you're complaining like, oh, well, this substrate is not as effective as this substrate. You're like, yeah, but there's bigger issues here. You always have to fight over that 1% difference that is not going to make a difference to the longevity of the animal. Or a lot of things I found, and especially one thing you do very well is, especially in your videos, you'll go back and say, hey, I said this before. This is something else I learned that is more correct and more effective. But one challenge, I don't know if this comes up a lot, is that with YouTube, I can go to your videos when they first came out and still like comment or talk about it. Do you find that people have, and this could just be a YouTube thing in general, that like your older videos that you, I would say regret doing it, but you find difficult being like, hey, I already corrected this. I've changed my opinions on it. Do you find old content coming up again? Not to, yeah, just old content coming up that you might have could have been correct back then that's not correct anymore, or do people kind of read the timestamp and realize this was an older opinion?
I think anyone reasonable does that, right? That's what you or
Yeah.
I would do. But you do see a lot of these people where they don't even want to argue with you because they think you're wrong. They
Hmm.
just want to prove how much more they know than you. It's a dick
Hmm.
measuring contest. That's all
Yeah.
it is. And I think that it does happen, but it's not very often.
Hmm.
Mostly, the most of the community is good to each other.
Hmm.
These are living animals. We
Hmm.
want them to have the best life, so we try to be helpful. It's just the guys who started, and it's the big thing is these guys who started 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and they know more than me,
Hmm.
but they don't have a voice because they never started a platform. They didn't want to, spend 24 hours a
Hmm.
week editing and replying to comments every morning and stuff like that. So they feel like it's a jealousy thing is what it is, because they have a voice, they know what they're talking about, but they have no way to get it out. So they just scream at clouds like old men, get off my
Hmm.
lawn. So I think that's what it is. And yeah, I do get a lot of those, especially the what was it, the most illegal reptiles in the world, or
Hmm.
master level reptiles,
Yeah.
where I said there's no elapids in the United States, and I forgot about coral snakes. So before I put the
Hmm.
video up, I put right in the first line of the descriptions, just so you know, I said there's no elapids. There's actually coral snakes. Whoops, my bad. So I corrected it right in the
Hmm.
description before the video went out, and I still get at least one comment every single day. That video was put out in December. Every single day, I get a comment about that. This guy doesn't know anything because, yeah, okay, read the description there. Hooked on phonics.
Yeah. No, it's very interesting. I mean, I think obviously with the on anything online, there is a ability to argue things you wouldn't obviously argue in person, but also one thing that could be contributing it is like you can Google any opinion you want. You could be like, especially with I found like with care, if you have your opinion, you're like, can I use this bedding? Oh, the answer is no. Benefits of using this bedding, you'll have some person says, well, technically this does work for this one thing. It's like this always reminds me of like growing up. First of all, the classic thing, like the average age was like life expectancy was 40 years old. That doesn't mean
Mhm.
people live to 40. They still live their whole lives, just died younger, earlier age. Or like wine's healthy. That's one I love. I remember in my class and I was like a kid. I'm like, my mom, everyone said wine's healthy to drink. And then I looked it up and they're like, wine is healthy, but you know what's more healthy? Eating a banana and some grapes. I'm like, oh, context. This makes a big difference in everything. So your YouTube channel is almost at the 100K. You're really growing here. You had at some time, I know you said you breeded in the past. Is that something you're still doing? Or with YouTube being so busy, it's kind of that's your main focus now? Because I know breeding does take time and everything around that.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, and I still do. I didn't breed any leopard geckos this year for the first time in like 4 or 5 years, just simply because I felt like there's enough of them out there. It's not like a big mover. I bred some hognose snakes, so I'm hoping that the one female that I've been breeding starts to put out some eggs. I did breed a few ball python pairs just because
Mhm.
they are more combinations that would sell really well, and there's not a lot of. So my
Mhm.
breeding is like very much hobbyist stuff. It's not like there's other channels like Mutation Creation, and he's like
Mhm.
another bigger channel in Toronto, and his main
Mhm.
thing is like he makes a living breeding snakes, but he also makes videos. I make a
Mhm.
living making videos, but I also breed snakes, so it's just kind of like the opposite ends of the spectrum, I guess.
Mhm. Yeah. And one thing you brought up earlier in this conversation was Discord.
Mhm.
I only knew Discord because of video games and gaming in general. But now I found like one of the people I talked to previously owns a mechanical keyboard website, one of the largest things in Canada. And like that's really where he does a lot of his customer success and really speaks to his viewers. How'd you find out about Discord? And have you found Discord a more effective way with reaching an audience compared to like a comment section, a mailing list? And why do you find it so much better? Because I know I kind of answered your question for you, but I found a lot of people really enjoy Discord as a way of connecting with the audience.
I never would have started Discord unless I was convinced to. There's a guy, Zykelpath. He's
Mhm.
a content creator and a comedian from Niagara,
Mhm.
and he has like a video game channel. So he
Mhm.
knew about it, obviously, right? It's a video
Mhm.
game platform, from what I understood. And I'm like, okay, I don't want this other nerd platform. Like, I don't know what this is. And then
Mhm.
he's like, I set it up for you. I made it. I'm going to transfer ownership and then do whatever you want. And this guy's done
Yeah.
basically everything to a certain point, and then
Mhm.
I started talking to people, and this is when work from home started. I started it like right after I started working from home last year when this whole thing started. And then so I had time because I was working on my home computer, and then I would like talk to people, and then it was like I would spend more time and more time, and then there was like voice chats, and it became like I actually legitimately have friends from different parts of the world. And like my admin team, like there's a guy from Australia, there's a guy from Chicago, like there's from everywhere. And I don't know, I just really like it. It's like a way to connect with people. And I've created this drama-free, cage Karen-free environment, and the admin team knows to yeet these people into outer space immediately if they join. So it's like a very toxic-free place, and it's the only place that I know of. And it helps that I have full control. I can kind of do whatever I want with the. I don't know. If you told me a year ago that I would love Discord, I would have told you were a liar. I didn't even want to start it. I'm glad that Zach at Psychopath made me do it. Basically,
That's so interesting because I don't know if when they created Discord what the intentions were, but like a lot of companies you wouldn't expect, or people you wouldn't expect to be. I mean, you're pretty tech savvy, but like tech savvy, like, oh, I use Discord for everything to communicate with my team. And it's like you said, it's like someone described me like it's like a Reddit with more control to some extent, or more of a community compared to Reddit, where you don't have random people as much posting
because you can MSN Messenger kind of like
and
it's kind of like that.
MSN was the greatest thing growing up. Rest in peace,
man, I miss
MSN. So you're posting videos constantly. If people want to keep up, learn more about you, what's the best way to view your content?
We'll subscribe on YouTube at Wickens Wicked Reptiles, and then I'm gonna start putting up more TikToks. Like that's the whole idea of hiring an editor, right? Is trying to like put up more stuff on Instagram and TikTok. That's all Wickens Wicked Reptiles too. And that's basically all I have going on right now. So I would love to plug some dates, but we're not allowed to leave our houses, so I can't do that.
Maybe if you move to Texas, like Joe Rogan and the rest of them, you could.
I am so unbelievably vocal about moving to Texas. I have an appointment with an immigration lawyer next week, so it's in the works. I'm leaving this place.
That's hilarious.